When a woman is faced with being ignored by a man, a natural reaction is to engage in self-analysis and search for her own shortcomings. But what if this indifference hides something more, reflecting the man's own internal problems rather than the woman's flaws? Psychologists claim that we often see in others only a reflection of our own fears and weaknesses. So why does a man choose to ignore as a way of interacting? What is hidden behind this external coldness? What deep motives drive him? What is he trying to hide from others and perhaps from himself? The male psyche, like the female, has its own shadow sides, unconscious aspects that a person tries to suppress. These shadows represent those personality traits that we do not want to acknowledge in ourselves. A man who ignores a woman may subconsciously project his own complexes, fear of close relationships, or a deeply ingrained sense of inferiority onto her. The real reason for this behavior often lies in the weakness that the man is desperately trying to hide. But why does he choose this particular tactic? Perhaps it is a manifestation of pride, emotional detachment, or a secret fear of revealing something that he would prefer to keep secret. His silence should not be seen as a sign of strength. Rather, it is an expression of an internal conflict that he himself does not fully realize. Until a person becomes aware of their unconscious motives, they will control their life, determining their actions and decisions. Is this man really in control of the situation, or is he just a victim of his own shadows? The answer to this question may be unexpected and shed light on the real reasons for his behavior. Many women, finding themselves in a situation of male silence, make a fatal mistake, perceiving it as a challenge that must be accepted. They desperately try to prove their importance, to win fleeting attention, to penetrate the depths of the mysterious male soul. However, as the profound thinker Carl Jung teaches us, true strength lies not in feverish searches, but in the integrity of the personality, in the ability to integrate experience. What will happen if, instead of reacting painfully to his detachment, you turn your gaze inward and ask yourself, what is this situation teaching me about myself? What will happen when you realize that a man's most vulnerable point is often his inability to cope with the overwhelming feelings he has for you? In this exploration, we will try to uncover the true underpinnings of male ignoring and show how a man's apparent strength is actually a manifestation of his deep weakness. You will discover something that he himself does not dare to admit. And when that understanding comes, his silence will no longer be able to hurt you. He distances himself and ignores you because deep down he is confident in your unwavering devotion. He is convinced that he can return at any moment and find you the same, accessible, attentive, waiting for his signs of attention. But what will happen when this self-confidence cracks? What will happen when he realizes that you have suddenly ceased to be the predictable woman he used to take for granted? Carl Jung rightly argued that the greatest illusion a person has is the belief in the possibility of controlling the unknown. The truth is that a man begins to feel loss only when his self-confidence is replaced by agonizing uncertainty. His weakness is not in leaving or ignoring you, but in the firm belief that it will not affect the situation in any way, that you will always be there, ready to fuel his ego. But when you stop reacting to his attacks, no longer showing the slightest interest, depriving him of the unconditional attention he considered self-evident, then something important happens. You stop being a passive element in his life and turn into a mystery that he can no longer easily solve. It is at this moment that his internal conflict begins, because according to Jung, a person is most afraid of what they cannot foresee. Doubts eat away at him from the inside much more than the loss itself. How many women, striving to conquer the heart of an unapproachable man, fall into the nets of futile efforts, They seem to send signals into the void, posting veiled messages on social media, anxiously tracking whether their message has been read and finding new ways to stay in his field of vision. But the paradox is that each such action only strengthens his imaginary power over them. However, as soon as a woman realizes that her absence means more than any desperate attempt to attract attention, the rules of the game change dramatically. Imagine, he suddenly realizes that he no longer sees her messages, does not notice her reactions to his publications. She seems to have disappeared from his field of vision. At this moment, a vacuum forms in his mind, a gaping abyss. That woman he thought he knew had ceased to exist. And therein lies the Achilles heel of a man who resorts to ignoring. He feels his power only as long as he is sure of her accessibility. But when that confidence begins to crumble, doubt creeps into his soul. Hasn't he missed something really valuable? As Carl Jung astutely observed, what we reject in others reflects our own self-rejection. And often a man ignores a woman not because of a lack of interest, but because of an unwillingness to admit the strong influence she has on him. But what happens when he suddenly realizes that he has lost exactly that influence, that invisible connection? When a man retreats into the shadows and resorts to ignoring, a woman's first natural reaction is to begin to delve into herself, wondering what is wrong with her. But what if I let you in on a secret? There are certain pain points, skillful manipulation of which can make even the most arrogant and proud man reconsider his behavior. Stay with us, and you will learn how to turn the tide of this game in your favor. When you suddenly disappear from his sight, an unprecedented confusion arises in his soul. The presence he took for granted suddenly evaporates, and he involuntarily tastes the bitter pill he himself prepared. The silence that served as his tool of control now turns against him. As the insightful Carl Jung said, the human psyche is constantly balancing between opposites, and when one extreme disappears, the other inevitably intensifies. If it was previously comfortable for him to ignore you, now he begins to be gnawed by an inexplicable discomfort. Absence has a truly magnetic effect. It makes him realize how important a place you occupied in his life, and suddenly this resulting void becomes unbearably heavy. Soon he makes the first timid attempts to remind you of himself. You notice how he stealthily views your stories on social networks, leaves perfunctory reactions to your publications, or throws a meaningless comment. It's as if he wants to say, "I'm still here, don't forget about me." But what has changed in his mind? The main difference is that he can no longer be sure of your unconditional accessibility. The attention he received without the slightest effort, the significance he felt thanks to his silence, all this now turns into his Achilles heel. Jung teaches us that the human mind strives for harmony, and when something constant suddenly becomes insufficient, it plunges us into a state of anxiety. This is exactly the effect you have on him with your disappearance. The second vulnerable point of a man who practices ignoring is the confidence he draws from the awareness that you are still around and patiently waiting for his attention. Men who feed on a woman's insecurity do so in order to feel in control. As long as he sees that you are afraid of losing him, that you are convinced that you will not find anyone better, he feels untouchable. But the situation changes dramatically the moment you prove him wrong. When you radiate self-confidence, when your energy is no longer dictated by need but filled with abundance, then his internal balance begins to crack. Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And when a man realizes that he is losing control over you, he suddenly experiences a feeling previously unknown to him: insecurity. The rules of the game change as soon as you strengthen your self-esteem and stop being content with crumbs of his attention. You no longer need to run after anyone and humiliate yourself. A woman who knows herself, who is aware of her worth, does not need to be begged to be noticed. She simply becomes irresistible in her independence because she does not put herself in the position of a beggar. When you reach the peak of self-confidence, something amazing happens. You not only regain your lost strength, but also disarm the one who is ignoring you. Suddenly, he loses confidence in his ability to control you like a puppet, and an alarming thought visits him. What if she won't be around when I want to come back? Before we continue to reveal the vulnerabilities of men who prefer ignoring, let me ask you a question. Have you ever encountered a similar situation? Did you feel like you were being ignored because you knew there were no consequences? If this video resonates with your soul, don't forget to express it with a like and share your country in the comments. Stay with us, because in the finale, I will reveal the secret of how to make a distant man feel your worth again and even fear loss. And now, let's move on to the next turning point. Often a man ignores you with the arrogance of a person who is convinced that he is the center of your universe. He sees himself as irreplaceable, believing that his presence is the key to your happiness. And why does this happen? Because many women, without even realizing it, fuel this illusion. They dissolve into relationships, direct all their energy towards their partner, and forget about other important aspects of their lives. As Carl Jung said, where energy flows, that's where growth occurs. And if you invest all your energy in a man who ignores you, you only strengthen his power over you. What if one day he realizes that he is no longer the sole object of your attention? The third Achilles heel of a man who exhibits signs of ignoring you lies in his sense of exclusivity, in the belief that he occupies a special place in your life. To break this vicious cycle, you need to deprive him of the self-confidence that allows him to stay in his comfort zone. The most effective way to do this is to strengthen your connections with friends, family, with people who genuinely value you, and fill your life with vibrant colors. Perhaps you have inadvertently neglected these relationships, focusing entirely on him. However, when you reconnect with those around you, something amazing happens. Your life gains new momentum, blossoms with new colors. You begin to understand that he was not and never will be the only source of your happiness. This does not mean that you need to immediately look for a replacement. On the contrary, it's not about finding a new partner, but about expanding your horizons. By strengthening social connections, you open yourself up to new acquaintances, explore uncharted territories, and your presence becomes even more attractive. And what happens to him at this moment? His sense of irreplaceability begins to crumble. As Jung said, a person fears losing control over what they considered their own. Noticing that he is no longer the center of your universe, he begins to experience the same feelings of insecurity that he used to cause you. Another vulnerability that many men subconsciously hide is the need to be indispensable to you. Many convince themselves that you need them emotionally or financially, and this gives them a false sense of superiority. However, when you demonstrate that your life does not depend on his presence, that you do not need him, but consciously choose those who are worthy of being by your side, everything changes dramatically. You are no longer the needy woman who can be ignored with impunity, but an independent individual who does not need anyone to feel complete. This is what confuses him, because now he needs to prove himself to remain a part of your life. And here the rules of the game change. He can, of course, continue to ignore you, but if you continue to develop, grow, and become stronger, he loses his power over you. He realizes that it is not you who is losing something, but him. Before we move on to the final stage, which will reveal the secret of how to not only regain the interest of a distanced man, but also make him afraid of losing you, share in the comments whether you have noticed similar trends in relationships. If this video has been a revelation for you, give it a like, because what follows may drastically change your approach to the situation. A man's self-esteem is his Achilles heel, both his most vulnerable point and his greatest weakness. When a man distances himself, it is important to remember that, according to Carl Jung, personality is formed through reflections and projections received from others. Admiration, desirability, and recognition from a woman nourish his ego, giving him a sense of control. But what happens when this source suddenly dries up? When he stops receiving your boundless attention and affection? He becomes defenseless, because what subconsciously supported him disappears. The paradox is that most men realize the value of a woman's presence only when she emotionally distances herself. This is not about physical ignoring or manipulative games. The real effect is achieved when you stop singling him out, when he is no longer the center of your world. The moment he becomes one of many, it strikes his psyche in a way he cannot express in words. Jung argued that the subconscious operates with symbols. When a man feels a change in a woman who once admired him, he feels a subtle but deep loss that he cannot rationalize. This is one of the main male weaknesses, the habit of admiration and desirability without any effort. But when this confirmation disappears, a turning point occurs. What seemed like an unshakable sense of security turns into an unexpected void that is not so easy to fill. This is where you need to be one step ahead. Instead of begging for attention or trying to prove your worth, direct this energy towards yourself. Become a woman who does not need his presence to feel special. That's exactly what will make him realize the loss of something he took for granted. The secret to skillfully influencing his self-esteem lies in the principle of reciprocity. Jung said that relationships are mirrors. If you constantly give him admiration, attraction, and attention without getting anything in return, he will never feel the need to value you. Therefore, when giving confidence, trust, and affection, make sure you receive the same in return. If a man feels he can get everything from you, without effort, if he is sure he deserves your devotion simply by the fact of his existence, he will never know your true worth. That's why so many women are frustrated. They give everything in the hope of recognition and reciprocation. But here it is necessary to change the approach. A woman who knows her worth does not waste herself. She understands that relationships should be built on balance. Before we move on to the final but important aspect that will show you how to encourage a distant man not only to value you, but also to experience the fear of loss, let me ask, have you ever been in a situation where your giving exceeded what you received? Share your experiences in the comments. And if this video opens your eyes to what is happening, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, because what you learn next can forever change your perception of such situations. The key moment comes when you realize that a man's attitude toward you directly reflects the value he ascribes to you in his life. If he's sure he can ignore you, knowing you'll always be around, available and waiting for his attention, he'll never experience the fear of losing you. As Carl Jung explained, it is inherent in human nature to subconsciously test the boundaries of others to determine how far one can go without fear of consequences. Unfortunately, many men do just that in relationships, often unconsciously. They withdraw, ignore, or show indifference because they are sure the woman will stay, no matter what. But what happens when that confidence suddenly disappears? When you stop giving him confirmation of your devotion, when you deprive him of his sense of security, his ego will be shaken. He used to take your attention for granted, something he could get without any effort. But the moment he realizes he needs to put in the effort to get it back, he experiences a completely new feeling for him: insecurity. Jung argued that the human psyche strives for patterns and predictability. So when a woman suddenly changes her behavior, a man who is confident in his control of the situation experiences deep inner discomfort. He realizes that the rules of the game have changed and that he will have to prove himself. This is the difference between a woman who is valued and one who is ignored. The former understands that her attention is a valuable gift, not an obligation. She doesn't chase anyone, doesn't beg, and doesn't settle for less than she deserves. And if a man feels he might lose her, he will be forced to rethink his behavior. His desire for control transforms into a desire to regain her favor. However, the key point is that you are no longer waiting for his recognition. You have already become the woman who decides who deserves to be around her. It is this change in your thinking that makes him realize your true worth. But there is another crucial factor. For these changes to be genuine, you must truly live them. This is not about pretending to be indifferent or playing psychological games, but about sincerely understanding that you should never have to fight for a man's attention. The biggest mistake a woman can make is to hope that a man will one day appreciate her, while she does not appreciate herself. Jung said that what we accept in others is a reflection of what we accept in ourselves. If you settle for less than you deserve, if you continue to invest in someone who does not reciprocate, then you are sending a signal to your subconscious that you are not good enough. And it is this belief that must be destroyed. Imagine what will happen when a man realizes that you no longer need him to feel great. Imagine his confusion when he realizes that he no longer has the control he once had. It is at this moment that he begins to experience fear, the fear of losing you, the fear of ceasing to be important, the fear that he may have made the biggest mistake of his life, and that's when you become the one in control of the situation. So tell me, have you ever noticed a similar dynamic in your life? Ultimately, the most important question is not what happens to him, but what happens to you. Why did you settle for less when from the very beginning? Undeniably, you deserve much greater recognition and respect. As Carl Jung keenly observed, our internal conflicts and unresolved issues inevitably project onto the reality that surrounds us. If a significant portion of your time and energy is spent dwelling on a man who doesn't reciprocate your feelings, trying to understand his emotions, desires, and thoughts, then perhaps it's a crucial moment for self-reflection. Ask yourself, where is that same devotion and care when it comes to yourself? Has it not happened that at some point you unconsciously delegated your self-esteem into his hands, making his assessment definitive for your own perception of yourself? The biggest mistake a woman can make is the mistaken belief that she has to prove her worth to someone, instead of allowing that worth to be obvious and not requiring confirmation. The truth can be painful, but it is what leads to liberation. If a man feels that he can afford to ignore you without any consequences for himself, then he is unlikely to ever truly appreciate you. And if the thought has taken root in his mind that he can return at any moment and find you unchanged without putting any effort into it, then he will never experience the fear of loss. It's important to realize that you yourself shape the attitude towards you, setting the boundaries of what is permissible and unacceptable. You determine what you are willing to accept and what you are not. And if until now you have not felt truly valued, then perhaps it is time for decisive changes in this dynamic. The essence of the problem often lies not in external circumstances or another person, but in the deep aspects of your self-perception. Jung argued that everything we attract into our lives is a reflection of our inner world. If in your life there are constantly men who are prone to ignoring, distancing, and unable to provide you with the priority you deserve, then it is necessary to conduct a deep internal analysis. Remember when you started to put up with such an attitude? When did you develop the belief that you have to fight for someone's attention? After all, a woman who is aware of her worth does not need to beg for attention. She simply radiates it with her inner confidence and dignity. This is the turning point. A man who demonstrates indifference may only be masking a deeply hidden fear. He trembles at the prospect of losing control, is afraid of ceasing to be the center of the universe for a woman he cares about, and fears the realization that his inattention to her was an unforgivable mistake. If you arm yourself with the knowledge you've gained, strengthen your self-esteem, and become an emotionally independent person, unwilling to settle for less than you deserve, he won't be able to help but notice these changes. Then he will face a dilemma. Either learn to value you properly, or admit that his power over you was just an illusion. But is it worth spending time on a person who needs the realization of the threat of loss to see your value? Isn't it time to change your perspective and understand that you deserve a partner who chooses you consciously, without manipulation, tests, and conditions? A woman who knows her worth will never despair because of a man's detachment, because she understands that true love does not need to be begged for. It arises naturally and effortlessly. If you have to fight to be noticed, perhaps it's time to stop this fight and focus on yourself. Today's revelations are not just about ways to make a man feel your loss. It's about transforming into a woman who no longer needs to beg for attention. It's about stopping waiting for messages, signs of attention, and confirmations of significance. It's about living a full life, realizing that self-love is a magnet for everything valuable and beautiful. When you change your inner energy, the world around you reacts instantly. And the man who allowed himself to ignore you suddenly finds himself in the role of desperately trying to regain a lost treasure. So, you are faced with a crucial question. Are you ready to continue to remain in the shadows, hoping that the man will finally appreciate your true value? Or will you choose the path of transformation and become the woman who exudes confidence and knows her worth? The choice is yours, and only you determine your destiny. Remember, your true strength lies not in external impression, but in a deep inner awareness of your own worth. When you truly accept and love yourself, you will never settle for less than you deserve. If this video made you think and look at the situation from a different angle, then this is only the first step towards change. You deserve not just a fleeting moment of recognition, but a complete transformation that will change your life forever. If you have ever faced similar situations, please share your experiences. Let's discuss this together and remember, the power has always been in your hands. You just needed to realize it. Now go and live the life you have always dreamed of, without expectations, doubts, or excuses. A woman who knows her worth should not have to ask for what is rightfully hers.